Masechet Baba Batra Daf Nun Tet. We are going to analyze this Mishnah that we read already. The Mishnah taught that a marzev en lo chazaka, a spout, this piece over here, even though the neighbor put this spout on his gutter, this is a temporary item. It's kind of movable, and therefore, even though he had it there for 3 years, I'll say I'm the neighbor over here, I can tell him that he has to move it. He does not attain a chazaka on it, because I assume that I can always protest. I didn't think I had to protest. However, its placement, there is a chazakah for that. The Gemara is going to give 3 views now about what that means. But then it's going to ask a question about the third view from this line that says the mazchila, the gutter pipe, that's this part itself that's attached to the wall. There is a chazakah. If you put it there and I did not protest for 3 years, then I cannot force him to move it. The difference is the mazchila is a permanent type of structure. And that same theme is going to be in the next law of an Egyptian ladder, which is a short ladder that my neighbor puts over here on his wall. There's no chazakah because it's just temporary, and so I didn't bother protesting, and so he does not get a chazakah. But a Tyrian ladder, which is big and relatively permanent, there, if he puts it there and I don't say anything, then he does have a chazakah. And the same is true regarding an Egyptian window, which is a small window. Well, there's 2 definitions. So Egyptian window is no chazakah. A Tyrian window, there is a chazakah. So 2 opinions. The Tanakh Kama says the difference is an Egyptian window is small enough that my head cannot fit into it, whereas a Tyrian window is big enough that one's head can fit through it, which also makes sense because if you could stick your head through the window, then that's going to be more cause to invasion of privacy, sticking your head out the window and looking around. And so smaller than that is just a hole in the wall, and that's why I didn't protest. I'm not going to protest every time you have a hole in the wall, but if it's bigger than that, then it's already called a window. Rabbi Yehuda, however, defines it as something that has a frame around it. If it has no frame, then it's just a hole in the window. I did not protest a hole because it's just a hole. Figured it's temporary, and therefore there's no chazakah. However, once you put a frame around it, then that becomes a permanent structure, and therefore I should have protested. If I don't, then one has a chazakah. That was the law of the Mishnah. Now the Gemara is going to ask, what does this mean that a spout, one cannot make a chazakah on it, but its place does have a chazakah? 3 opinions. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shemuel, Hachika Amar, Hamarzev eno chazakah meruach achat, v'yeshem komo chazakah mishete ruchot. Shemuel says it means that a spout, one cannot make a chazakah on one side, but its placement does have a chazakah on 2 sides. That means that if the spout was placed over here, it does not have a chazakah in terms of its placement along this one side. So if I'm over here and I say, hey, listen, I want to build something over here, and I want you to move it to that side, then I have a right to do that. But I cannot make you move it to another side of it. So its placement on one side does not have a chazakah. I mean, I can make you move it, but its placement from one side to another does have a chazakah. Once you have it on this side, then you have a right to keep it on that side. So that's the difference. I certainly can't tell you to remove it altogether. Once you have a spout, so you have a right to have a spout somewhere along the side, but I can tell you if I want you to move it from one side of this side of the house to another area on that same side of the house. So that's Shemuel. So that the spout does not have a chazakah means its precise placement along that side of the house, there is no chazakah. But yeshem komo means that it has to remain on that side of the house. Rabbi Chanina Amar Hamarzev eno chazakah she'im haya aroch mekasero v'yeshem komo chazakah she'im bad le'okro eno okro. Rabbi Chanina has a second opinion, and he says spout, when it says there's no chazakah, that means it's talking about the size of it. If it's long, and I'm the neighbor and I want you to make it shorter, so then you have no chazakah about the length of the spout, meaning how far it will go out into my land. I say, no, I want you to cut it shorter. I have a right to do so. But to tell you to remove it altogether, I do not have a right to do so. So you have a chazakah about its placement, meaning that it's going to be right here. But regarding its length, that's what it means that there is no chazakah. Third opinion, Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba Amar, Hamarzev eno chazakah, she'im roseh libnot tachtav boneh, v'yeshem komo chazakah she'im ba le'okro eno okro. Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba says that when it says there's no chazakah, it means that if I want to build under it, I have a right to. I can go and build, even though this is pouring down over here. I can build something right up against your wall, even though it's under your this drain pipe. You don't gain the airspace under it. However, as to tell you to remove it altogether, that I cannot do. Like, let's say I want to build something that goes all the way up and it goes even higher. And in order to build higher, it's going to remove your drain, the spout altogether. That I am not allowed to do. However, so you have a chazakah under it, but not to take it all off and build above it. So now we're going to apply these three opinions regarding the gutter itself, because the gutter, the Mishnah says, one does have a chazakah. So we're going to ask about this third opinion, have the gutter. So that would mean that the gutter, which has a chazakah, I cannot even build under it. And the question is, why not? Why wouldn't I be able to build under the gutter? I understand I can't build high and remove the gutter. I can't even remove the spout. That's what it meant here. Yesh l'mkomo chazakah. But what does this mean? Hamazchila yesh la chazakah. So let's see how the Gemara says it. Tenan hamazchila yesh la chazakah. Bishlama leman damar hanachtar te shapir. Ela leman damar. So the Mishnah says that a gutter, there is a chazakah for that. We understand, according to the first two opinions, that makes sense that the gutter has a chazakah. Because if you say it means that the spout, you're allowed to move from one place to another along that side. Fine, the spout you're allowed to move, but the gutter you cannot move because that's a permanent structure and I didn't protest all 3 years. So it makes sense that the Mishnah would say that. And it would make sense that I don't have a right to move the gutter. And according to the second one, that if it's long, then I have a right to tell you to shorten it regarding the spout. Fine, that's true regarding the spout, which is a temporary structure. But let's say this is long, it sticks out a lot, and that's a permanent structure. So if I want to shorten it, I cannot do so. Which makes perfect sense why I would not be able to shorten the structure, because it's a permanent thing and I didn't protest for 3 years. And so that's it. You acquired the right for that length. So either for the placement or the length for the first opinion or the second opinion. But here's the question. According to the third opinion that says that regarding the spout, I am I'm allowed to build under it, but I just cannot take it off altogether. So that would mean that regarding the gutter, I'm not even allowed to build under it. And the question is, well, why not? What difference does it make to the owner of the gutter if I build under the gutter? I'm just building something under here. So you said, okay, under the spout, I'm allowed to build. Under the gutter, I'm not allowed to build. Why not? I'm not ruining your gutter. I'm not affecting your gutter at all. This is my land. Why can't I build under the gutter? Right? What would be the reason for that? That's our question. And the answer is, Hacha b'mazchila shel binyan askinan, damar le lanicha li detitra ishatai. We're talking about a gutter pipe that's made out of stone for on the wall. And if I build something right next to it, then the stones will become weakened, and because of all the vibrations from building it. The stone is especially sensitive to those types of vibrations. So if it's on a wall of stone and it's made out of stone, the gutter pipe itself, so then that's why I'm not allowed to build right under it, because that's it. By building that kind of permanent structure of the gutter, and I didn't say anything for 3 years, that means you attain the right even under the gutter pipe, that I'm not allowed to build there in order not to weaken it. On the other hand, the spout, which is a temporary thing made out of wood, that is not going to weaken if I build under that, and so therefore that's permitted. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Shemuel, Sinor hamkalech mayim lachasar chavero, uba bal hagag lesotmo, ba lechaser ma'akev alav, damar le, ki hechi dat kanit lach chaser didi lemishta behemaya, ledidi name keneli maya deigrach. Rav Yehuda says the name of Shemuel, that if there is a gutter that's draining water from someone's rooftop to that person's field, right? So you have a roof and you have a drain pipe and it's draining into my field. And then the owner of the roof wants to close it up. He wants to close up that pipe, that gutter that's going on, that's bringing water. So the owner of the courtyard can stop the owner of the roof from stopping the water. In other words, he can demand that he keep that water pipe open, because the owner of the courtyard can say, just like you acquired space in my courtyard to put water there, so too I acquired the water of your rooftop. So it's a two-way street. When we have this pipe over here, so you put a pipe here that brings all the water from your rooftop onto my courtyard, and fine, for 3 years this is happening, and I didn't say anything. So that means you acquired the right to have your water going into my courtyard. So fine, you have that right. But it's reciprocal, that I have a right to get your water. I want the water into my courtyard. It's good for me. It's watering my plants, and therefore, if you want to stop it up and take it away, then I can stop you from stopping it and say, oh, I have a chazakah on the water that comes from your roof, which is very interesting. Once you have a deal like that, then you have to keep it going. Itmar, Rabbi Oshaya amar me'akev, Rabbi Chama amar eno me'akev, azal shaylel Rabbi Bisa amar lehu me'akev. And actually there's a multi-generational machloket about this. Rabbi Oshaya says that the owner of the courtyard can stop the owner of the roof from closing up his gutter. Rabbi Chama, that's Rabbi Oshaya's father, says, no, we cannot stop him. The owner of the roof says, okay, look, I've been draining my water onto your courtyard until now, but I want to stop. I want to move it somewhere else. Maybe he wants to move it to the other side. And you don't acquire a right to someone else's water that's falling on their roof. There's no such thing as a right like that. So Rabbi Chama says that the owner of the courtyard cannot stop him. But then they went to ask Rabbi Bisa, who is Rabbi Oshaya's grandfather and Rabbi Chama's father. And he agreed with his grandson and said, yes, that the owner of the courtyard can stop the owner of the roof from moving his water. And we say about this 3-generational machloket, Kari ale Rami bar Hama, ve'achut ha'mishulash lo bimhera yinatek, zeh, Rabbi Oshaya, beno shel Rabbi Chama, beno shel Rabbi Bisa. There's a pasuk in Kohelet that says a 3-fold cord will not quickly break. It's very strong. If you make a cord out of 3 ropes and twine them all together, then that's going to be a very strong rope, and that applies to 3 generations of sages. When you have a father who teaches a son, who teaches the grandson, and they're all Talmidei Chachamim, then you can be assured that their Torah will be strong and continue for many generations to come. And this is a fascinating application, because even though the father disagreed with the son, and the son disagreed with his son, but that's okay. Part of the Torah learning is the fact that there's going to be disagreements, machloket, discussion back and forth. But the point is that they're all engaged in the Torah of their forefathers, and that is what makes Torah long-lasting for generations to come. Sulam misri en lo hazaka. Hechi dame sulam misri amri. Tebe Rabbi Yanai kol she'en lo arba'a havakin. So the Mishnah says that an Egyptian ladder is small, temporary, portable, and therefore does not create a chazakah. What's the definition of an Egyptian ladder? In the Bet Midrash of Rabbi Yanai, it was taught that it's any ladder that does not have 4 rings, has less than 4 rungs to it, so that's considered just a step stool, a temporary thing, and therefore that's why a person didn't protest. And so there's no chazakah. Chalon mitzrit en la chazakah v'chule. Ma'ishena gabe sulam de la mefaresh, u'ma'ishena gabe chalon de mefaresh. A question on the style of the Mishnah. How can in the Mishnah it gave a definition regarding the window, and it said Egyptian window, that's one that's too small that you can't fit your head through. A Tyrian window is one that you can fit your head through. It gave a definition of it. So, but by the ladder, the Mishnah did not give a definition. We had to go find a statement from the school of the Yanai to give us a definition. So how come? Why to give a definition for one but not the other? And the answer is simple: Mishum dekaba'e afluge Rabbi Yehuda b'sefaha, because it wanted to bring the dissenting opinion of Rabbi Yehuda in the sefaha. So because regarding the window there are 2 opinions, so it had to bring the Tanakama so that it could tell you that Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. But since regarding the ladder, there was no disagreement, so it didn't quote anything at all, relying on the teacher-student relationship, that these are all oral. And so naturally the student will ask, what does that mean? what is this type of ladder, and the teacher will fill in the definitions of it. So when there's no machloket, so then just part of the explanation of the Mishnah doesn't have to say anything. But when there is a disagreement about it, that's when the Mishnah has to mention it. Amar Rabbi Zera, lemata marba amot yesh lo chazaka ve'yachol limchot. Lemala me'arba amot en lo chazaka ve'eno yachol limchot. Rabbi Il'a amar afilu lemala me'arba amot en lo chazaka ve'yachol limchot. So now, more on the topic of a window, Rabbi Zera says, if the window is below 4 amot, then the one who makes the window does have a chazaka. So you have a guy who has a house, and that's next to a neighbor's courtyard. So you have the owner of the courtyard and the owner of the house. The owner of the house makes a window that's within 4 amot from the ground, which is low enough that one can just look outside the window and see into the neighbor's courtyard. And that will be annoying to the neighbor, and the neighbor has a right to say, hey, I don't want you to do that. So in that case, if he doesn't protest for 3 years, the owner of the courtyard, if it does not protest, then the owner of the window gets a chazakah, and he has a right to leave the window there. And correlated to that is that the owner of the courtyard can protest and stop the owner of the window from putting the window there. He can force him to cover up that window. He has a right to his privacy in his courtyard. However, if the window that the owner of the house makes is above 4 amot, that's above 6 feet, so then it's hard to see. You can't see out, if you're just standing up a regular tall person will not be able to see out of this window, and therefore there is no chazakah for that, and the neighbor cannot protest. The cannot protest part is, since it's above 4 amot, so then, this is not causing any damage to the owner of the courtyard. The guy inside the house can't see outside the window anyway, so he's just getting a window there because he wants air, he wants light, whatever, but it's not causing any damage. So therefore, he cannot protest. Now, since he cannot protest, also the owner of the window does not have a chazakah there. And so eventually, if the owner of the courtyard wants to build something in the courtyard and cover up that window, so he has a right to build. And he says, well, but I have this window here for 3 years and you never said anything. Yeah, I didn't say anything because I can't say anything. I'm not even allowed to protest. And therefore, there is no chazakah. That's the opinion of Rabbi Zera, that there's a difference between a high window and a low window. Rabbi Il'a disagrees and says, even if the window is above 4 amot, the owner of the window does not gain a chazakah, even if it's there for 3 years, and the owner of the courtyard does not protest. And furthermore, the owner of the courtyard can protest and make him remove that window. So, according to the Il'a, even though it's high up, and the owner of the window cannot see through it easily, nevertheless, the owner of the courtyard says, I don't want a window there. This is my courtyard. I don't want you to have any window at all, even though it's high up. He has a right to say so. We'll try to explain his logic in a minute. And furthermore, even if he does not protest, the owner of the window never gets a chazakah. And the owner of the courtyard, later on, if he wants to build something, he can build it and cover up that window, and the owner of the window never gains a chazakah. The owner of the courtyard has full rights, stop him even though it's higher, and to cover it up anytime he wants, and says, I have a right to use all my airspace, and for you not to peer into my courtyard, no matter what, even if it's high up. That's Rabbi Elazar's opinion. So let's try to explain the essence of their difference. Lema bechofin al midat sedom kamipalge. Demor sabar kofin, umor sabar en kofin. Perhaps they're disagreeing about the principle of whether a bet din can force someone not to act like the people of Sedom. The people of Sedom were stingy and evil, and they would not want anybody to get anything good on their account. And even if that someone was getting a benefit with no loss to the owner, they would nevertheless say, no, I just don't want you to have it. Even though it's for free and I'm not losing anything, I can stop. I would want to stop you from having it. That's a kind of midah of Sedom, sheli, shelach, sheli, and so on. So the question is, can the Bet Din stop a person from acting like a person from Sedom? Who would be acting like that in this case? It's the owner of the courtyard, because if this guy, I understand, if it's lower than 4 amot, amot. So the owner of the courtyard says, I have a right to privacy. I don't want you to put a window so low. That we understand. That's a normal claim because it really causes damage. But if it's above 4 amot, so then the owner of the courtyard is no damage to him, and yet this guy, the owner of the courtyard, is being stingy and saying, no, I don't want you to have a window, even though he's not losing out anything. The guy just has a nice window. He can look up at the sky if he wants. So what's the problem? So maybe that's the essence of the machloket. The Rabbi Zera says, kofin, that the Bet Din can force someone not to act like a stingy Sodom resident. And so they can tell the owner of the courtyard, you cannot protest your neighbor putting up a high window. Let him put up the high window. Now, he won't have a chazakah, so that later on, if you want to build up there, that's it. You can build up there. That's fine. So you don't lose your right forever. But if you want right now, you're not building up a high building next to it, so you cannot protest. You cannot act like a Sodom guy. However, Rabbi Ilah says, and kofin, the Bet Din does not get involved. You should not act like a person from Sodom. It's not a nice thing to do. But can the Bet Din force you? We're not going to force you. It would be nice if you were generous and allowed your neighbor to build that window that's high. It's not bothering you anyway. But if you want to protest, yachol limchot, it's within your right to act like a stingy, low-life Sodom guy. Maybe that's the essence of their machloket. And we say no. La dekula amakofi. No, in fact, everybody agrees. Even the Bi'elah would agree that the Bet Din can stop a person from acting in a stingy way. V'shane hachad amar le zimnin demot bat shar shifa tutach v'kaimat v'ka hazet. And here it's different because the owner of the courtyard can say, I know you. Sometimes he tells the owner of the window, sometimes you're going to bring a bench and you're going to stand on top of the bench and look out the window into my courtyard, even though it's higher than 6 feet. So just a normal person standing on the floor can't see out the window, but you can be a nosy body and stand on the bench and stand on your tippy toes and peer into my courtyard while I'm doing laundry or exercise or whatever private thing I want to do in my courtyard. And therefore, he is impinging on his privacy. So this is not midat Sodom. It's a legitimate claim to say, I don't want you to have any window, not even a high up window. Ameh. Shedare lekamed Rabbi Abba bar Memal. Amar le Abid le Rabbi Ilah. One time there was a case that exactly like this of someone who wanted to build a window higher than 4 amot, and the case came to Rabbi Ameh, and Rabbi Ameh sent the case higher up to Rabbi Abba bar Memal, and Rabbi Abba bar Memal said to Rabbi Ameh, you should rule like Rabbi Ilah and allow the owner of the courtyard to protest, because he could say, I don't even want you to have a high window. I don't know when you're standing up on a stool and peering into my courtyard and causing an invasion of privacy. Amar Shemuel ul ora afilu kol shehu yesh lo hazaka. Now Shemuel goes back and gives a limitation on the Mishnah and says, if someone built a window for light, then even if it's a small window, there is a chazakah. There's a difference between a window that you make for a view. For that, if a window for a view, then it depends if it's small, if it's big, according to what the Mishnah said. However, if he wants to make one for light, even a small window can bring a lot of light into a home. And so if you see the window is like up, on top, and it's in a spot where the sun is going to come in, and he's putting it for light, and the neighbor doesn't say anything for 3 years, there is a chazakah, because that kind of window, even though it's small, is very useful and is a permanent structure. A window for a view that's so small that you can't even put your head out, that's not called a window for viewing, and so that's just a temporary thing. That's why the neighbor didn't protest. But in a window that's used for light, even though it's small, you can see, he put a skylight up there. So then that would be a permanent thing, even though it's small, and you should have protested if you didn't want it. And if you didn't protest then there is a chazakah in that case. While the previous Mishnah spoke about a gutter and a spout sticking out of someone's roof, now we're going to be talking about a beam that is sticking out of one's roof onto someone else's courtyard. Haziz ad tefach yesh lo chazaka veyechol limchot. Pachot mitefach en lo chazaka ve'en yachol limchot. So if you have someone with a building and a roof, and there is a beam that's sticking out and overhanging over someone else's courtyard. So if it's at least a tefach long and overhanging or more, then there is a chazakah, because since it's protruding a lot, the owner of the courtyard should have protested and said, hey, what is that beam doing there? Get rid of that beam overhanging into my courtyard. We're going to see the Gemara is going to explain this is going to be an issue of hezek re'iyah, of trespassing by sight, since the owner of the roof might use that beam and want to hang things on it. So then he's going to go up there and go on the beam and be looking down into the courtyard. So he should protest. If he doesn't protest in 3 years, then the owner of the beam gets a chazakah. And furthermore, the owner of the courtyard can protest at any time and say, take that away. So these two laws go hand in hand. He can protest and therefore should protest. If he doesn't, there is a chazakah. However, if the beam is very short, it's less than a tefach, less than a handbreadth, just 3-4 inches. So then that's not a very significant amount of overhang, and therefore he does not get a chazakah, and the owner of the courtyard cannot protest. He can't protest, say get rid of that beam. It's just a little tiny thing, and so there's no reason, there's no possibility of protest, and therefore there's also no chazakah, because he can't say, I left this here for 3 years, you didn't say anything. He didn't even have a right to protest anything. And therefore, if the owner of the courtyard then wants to build in such a way that he'll have to cut off that protruding beam, he has a right to do so. And the fact that he didn't protest is not a proof that he gives over consent. Amar Rabbi Aseh Amar Rabbi Maneh. V'amri la Amar Rabbi Yaakov Amar Rabbi Maneh. So someone said in the name of Rabbi Maneh, Hechazik betefach, hechazik be'arba. Mai ka'amar, Amar Rabbi Yehachi ka'amar. Hechazik berochav tefach b'meshech arba, hechazik berochav arba. So Rabbi Maneh says something that's a bit cryptic. He says, if there's a chazakah for 1 tefach, there's a chazakah for 4 tefachim. So the Gemara itself asks, what does that mean? And Abaye explains it. If there's a beam that's projecting out 4 tefachim, we would say long, 4 tefachim away from the wall of this guy's home, 4 tefachim overhanging into the courtyard, and it's 1 tefach thick. The beam itself is 1 tefach thick. If you have such a situation, then it stays there for 3 years, and the owner of the courtyard doesn't protest this beam that's sticking out into his courtyard 4 tefachim, then the owner of the beam gets a chazakah not only for the length and width of that beam, which is 4 by 1, but we actually square it so that he has a chazakah for a significant amount of 4 by 4 tefachim. So you have the length that's sticking out into his courtyard 4 tefachim, and even though the beam itself is only 1 tefach wide, we'll extend the chazakah to cover 4 tefachim of space, so he has a 4 by 4 tefach square. פחות מטפח אין לו חזקה ואינו יכול למחות. אמר רב הונא לא שנו אלא בעל הגג בבעל החסר, אבל בעל החסר ובבעל הגג יכול למחות. So the Mishnah said that if it's a very small beam, a projection that's less than 1 tefach, then it says he does not have a chazakah and he cannot protest. The question is, who is this pronoun? Who cannot protest whom? So Rav Huna says that this is only the owner of the roof, that's the owner of the beam, cannot protest the owner of the courtyard. In other words, if the owner of the courtyard wants to use that little projection of the beam to hang things on it, he wants to hang laundry on it, or whatever, then the owner of the beam cannot protest. After all, it's in the airspace of the owner of the courtyard. So that's what the not protest means. However, the owner of the courtyard can protest the owner of the roof. So this is, Rav Huna is very much limiting the law of the Mishnah. A simple reading of the Mishnah, as Rav Yehuda will say, is, well, let's read Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda amar afilu ba'al chaser ve'ba'al hagag eno yachol limchot. Rav Yehuda says it goes both ways. That the owner of the courtyard of the beam cannot protest the owner of the courtyard using it, and the owner of the courtyard also cannot protest protest the owner of the beam having the beam there, because it's such a small projection. So therefore, it's not a significant thing, and he has to tolerate that this thing is there. So that's Rav Yehuda that says the owner of the courtyard has to tolerate this a small overhang into his courtyard. But Rav Huna says that's not fair. Why should he have to tolerate that? So he says that the owner of the courtyard can protest and say, I don't want that little beam sticking out into my courtyard. And the Mishnah, when it says that he cannot protest, that's the owner of the beam cannot protest the usage of the owner of the courtyard if the owner of the courtyard wants to hang things on it. So now, what's the essence of their machloket? Lema bezek reiya kami palge. Demor sabar shemeh hezek, umor sabar lav shemeh hezek. Perhaps they're arguing about whether damage by sight is in fact called damage. Do you call that damage? I'm not doing anything. I'm not breaking anything in your courtyard. I'm just looking into it. Is that called damage? So it seems that Rav Huna would say that it is called damage, and that's why the owner of the courtyard can always say, I don't want that overhang there, because I know what you're going to do. You're going to be using that overhang. It's not just about the airspace. It's that you're going to come onto your roof and you're going to want to hang things there. And then while you're up there, all the way at the edge, you're going to look down into my courtyard and see what I'm doing, and therefore I can stop you from using that and make you take it away, because damage by sight is damage. That's the opinion of Rav Huna. However, Rav Yehuda says no, it's not hezek, and therefore the owner of the courtyard cannot stop the owner of the roof from using it. It's just a little projection, and if he wants to go there and hang stuff on it, he's permitted to. And even though he may look down while he's doing that, that's not considered real damage, and therefore the owner of the courtyard cannot stop the owner of the roof. So is that the essence of their machloket? And we answer, La dekula ama shemehezek v'shanehacha damar le letashmishta la hazi lemay chazi lemitla bemidi mehadarna la'apai v'talena be. No, in fact, everybody thinks that damage by sight is considered damage. And nevertheless, the owner of the courtyard cannot protest this little beam sticking out, even though the owner of the courtyard will use it, because this case is different. Even though in general, damage by sight is considered damage, here the owner of the roof of that beam can say, is this not suitable for use? What kind of use is it suitable for? This little thing. You can't really, build something on it or stand on it. So what is it useful for? To hang things on it. So let me hang things on it. I will turn my face away and not look into your courtyard. And so I'll look backwards. I'll walk backwards, and I'll stick out my hand behind me and hang something on the beam. And so I can do that without looking. I understand. If I look into your courtyard, then you can sue me for such damages. But I can use the beam to hang things on without looking into your courtyard. Since the owner of the roof and the beam can say that, that's a good claim according to Rav Yehuda, and therefore the owner of the courtyard cannot protest this little piece of beam sticking out and the usage of the owner of the beam. V'idach, and the Rav Huna, who says that he can protest. So what does he say about that? Amar le zimnin de be'itat. No, sometimes the owner of that roof is going to be afraid of heights, and he's going to then glance behind him to see where he is if he's close to the edge. And when he's looking, when he's looking that way, then he's going to look into the neighbor's courtyard and violate his privacy. And since that's likely to happen, since he is after all up on the roof, therefore it's likely that he will look, and therefore the owner of the courtyard has a right to say, I don't want you using that jut out on your roof, that beam. And so he always has a right to protest, even if it's just a small beam. And that brings us to the next Mishnah, Lo yiftach adam chalonotav lachasar hashutafin. One may not open a window into a shared courtyard. If someone owns a home and there's a shared courtyard, there's many homes there, and they all share a common area, so he cannot open a window where he could see into that common courtyard, again, because that would be invading the privacy of all the people that are in that courtyard. Lakach bait bechasar acheret lo yiftechenna bechasar hashutafin. If someone bought a home that's part of a different courtyard, but it's also it's adjacent to two courtyards. In other words, it's like the front door is in one courtyard. That's the courtyard that he officially belongs to. But if he opens a door in the back, then he can open a door into another courtyard. So if he buys such a house, he's not allowed to open a back door into another courtyard, because then he's increasing traffic in that courtyard, and so he's not officially part of that courtyard, and so therefore he cannot open a new entranceway into the courtyard that he is not already a part of. Bana aliyah al gabe beto lo yiftechenna lachasar hashutafin ela im rasa boneh et hacheder lifnimi beto boneh aliyah al gabe beto ufotcha letoch beto. If someone builds a second story above his home, he cannot make a separate opening to a shared courtyard. In other words, he has a one-story home. It opens into a courtyard, so that's it. He has a right to that courtyard. He's part of it. And now he wants to build a second story, but the second story doesn't have an internal staircase into the first, but rather an external staircase that is a separate entranceway that he could then rent out to another family. And he's not allowed to do that because that would be, again, increasing traffic into the courtyard. So then it would be just more people than there were there before. So that would impinge on the rights of the other people of that shared courtyard. However, if he wants, he can build another room within his house. Right now we can understand this as an extension to his house. Or he can build a second story above his house, as long as the opening is within his house. In other words, it has like an internal ladder or internal staircase. So as long as the extension, whichever way it is, sideways or upwards, but is within the house, the people are still walking in and out of the same front door, that's permitted. Now the Gemara will ask, but isn't that also increasing the traffic in the courtyard? Because now there's going to be more people living there. So the Gemara will explain this. Now the Gemara says, "Mai iriya lachasar shutafin, afilu lachasar chavero nami la." How come in the first case where it says you cannot open a window onto a joint courtyard, why does it talk about a joint courtyard? How about just a simpler case of the one person, one neighbor, and also one cannot open a window that looks over onto the courtyard of a neighbor? That's also not allowed. So why is it going into a case of multiple people that he's annoying? He's infringing on their privacy. Why jump to a case of many people? It's not allowed even if it's only one person. So just tell me that one cannot open it onto a courtyard of one person, and obviously one cannot open it onto a courtyard where there's many people and is infringing on many people's privacy. So the answer is Lami Ba'ya Ka'amad. We're using not only this is not allowed, but even that. Lami Ba'ya Lachasar Chavero de la Ava Lachasar Shutafin Damar Le Sof Sof Ha Kaba'it Itz Tanu'e Minai Bechaser Kamash Malan Damar Le Ada Idana Bechaser Hava Ba'ina Itz Tanu'e Minach Hashta Afilu Babait Name Ba'ina Itz Tanu'e Minach. So actually this is a bigger chidush, this case of the joint courtyard, because I could say as follows: not only regarding a courtyard of a friend, I own this building over here, and you own that land over there in that courtyard, and there I'm not allowed to open a window, because then I'm going to look into your courtyard. That obviously is not allowed. But in the following case, I might have thought maybe it is allowed if it's part of a joint courtyard, and I am part of that joint courtyard. We have 5 houses that all use this courtyard as a entryway, and so in that case, I could say I'm the one opening the window. And so listen, in the end, you're going to have to hide your activities from me, because I'm going to come into the courtyard, and I'm allowed to pass through the courtyard. I can sit in the courtyard. I can do whatever I want. And look into the courtyard. It's my courtyard also. And so therefore you're going to have to conceal your activities from me no matter what. So therefore you might have thought that I am allowed to open a window. In other words, a window that would look over into someone else's property. That for sure is not allowed. This is a bigger chidush, that even a window that opens into a shared property where I can go out my door and be standing there and look at what you're doing. So you might have thought that I'm allowed to open up a window there. And this Mishnah comes to teach, not so. Because the neighbor could say, until now, when you're in the courtyard, then I have to conceal. When I go into the courtyard, I want to do something private. I see, oh, there's people around, so then I do it another time. But then if I go into the courtyard, I see there's nobody around, everybody's in their homes, then I know, oh, I have some privacy and I have some time to do whatever I want here. So that's okay. But now that you open this window, even when you're in your home, I never know when you're looking out the window and looking upon me using the courtyard. So in a shared courtyard also, even though I have a right to go out to the courtyard, but when I'm out in the courtyard, you'll see me, and then you'll stop doing whatever private thing that you want to be doing. But if I open the window onto the courtyard, then you never know, and then that's not fair because then you never know when to conceal what you're doing, and when you can assume that there is nobody looking, and so therefore there's no right to open a window, not only into someone else's courtyard, but even into my own shared courtyard. Tenor Banan, Maaseh be'adam echad shepatach chalonav lachasad hashutafin. Uba lifnei Rabbi Ishmael bar Rabbi Yoseh, amar lo hechezakta, bani hechezakta. There was a case just like this of someone who opened up a window onto a shared courtyard. And the case came to Rabbi Ishmael, and Rabbi Ishmael said the guy who opened the window gets a chazakah, because Rabbi Ishmael thought that you can get a chazakah immediately. If I do something and people do not protest immediately, then that means they're okay with it. And in this case, the people did not protest immediately. They protested after some time. And they said, oh, we never wanted you to put that window there. And so Rabbi Ishmael says, no, you get a chazakah right away. They have to give their protest in immediately. If they didn't, then I have a chazakah. But the case also came to Rabbi Chaya, and he had the opposite opinion. And he told the guy who opened the window, you toiled and opened the window, now go toil and close it. Just like you opened it, you have to close it, and you do not get a chazakah immediately. If they didn't say anything for 3 years, then you'd have a chazakah. But they did not do so, and therefore you have to go and close it. Amar Rav Nachman, v'listom la'altar have chazaka. Shen adam asui shesotmin oro befanav v'shotek. Rav Nachman says that if someone had a window there, he has a window for forever. This is his window, a chazaka and all that. And then someone comes and seals up the window. In other words, they build a wall right up against the window and close it up and seal it up. And the owner of the window, if he doesn't protest immediately, then the owner of that wall gets a chazakah, and the owner of the window can no longer protest after that. Why? Because a person doesn't allow that his light source will be closed up and become dark and be quiet. So it's one thing to not protest right away. If someone opened a window and is looking into my courtyard, okay, I didn't say anything today or tomorrow, I have time. I have 3 years to do so. But even according to that opinion, against Rabbi Ishmael, if I have a window that brings my light into my home, and then all of a sudden someone comes and seals up the window, and now it's all dark in my house, I'm not going to tolerate that for 1 minute. And so I should go protest right away. If I don't protest right away, then that means that I don't mind, and the one who closed up the window has a right to leave his wall there. לקח בית בחסר אחרת, לא יפתחנו לחסר השותפים. מה טעמם? מפני שמטבע עליהם את הדרך. If I buy a house in another courtyard, in other words, I buy a home that is attached on 2 sides. On one side opens to one courtyard, another side to another shared courtyard. I cannot open a back door into the other courtyard that it was not originally part of. That's what the Mishnah said. The Gemara asks, what's the reason? Is because I'm going to increase traffic. Beforehand, that courtyard had 20 people in it, and now I opened a new back door of my house, and I have 5 people living in my house. Now there's 5 more people that are going to be going in and out of that courtyard. So the people of that courtyard can stop me. אם אספה אלא אם רצה בונה את החדר לפנים מביתו בונה עלייה על גבי ביתו ולא מרבה עליו את הדרך derech. So now we can quote the end of the Mishnah that says, although I cannot build a new second story on my house with a separate entrance, because then there's going to be more people living there, but I can, if I want, build an extra room, build an extension on my house, or I can build a second story as long as the entranceway is still within my house. As long as I just have one front door, I can build an extension sideways and up. But why should that be allowed? I'm also increasing traffic in the courtyard that I'm in. There's 20 people, and now I'm making more rooms. So now more people can be living in the house. So why is that allowed? Amar Rav Huna, my cheder shecheleko b'shnayim ma'aliyah aftai. Rav Huna explains, what does it mean when the Mishnah says that you can make an extra room? It doesn't mean extending and make an extra room, making the home bigger, but rather taking a room that is currently there and just splitting it into two. All right, the kids want their own bedroom, so I want to make an extra room. I take a big room and I split it into two smaller rooms. And when it says to make a second story, it doesn't mean actually enlarging the house and making it higher, but rather I'm making two stories within the current height. The current height is 10 feet, so now I put a ceiling in the middle, a floor in the middle, and now they're 5 feet each, so that people can use the upstairs and downstairs, even though they're kind of short. Whatever, they can sit down or lie down. So I'm not increasing the size of the house. I'm just adding walls or floors into the house. So that's just for my convenience. If I want, people can have more separate rooms in the house. But that's what it's saying. That's what's permitted. But in fact, to make an extension of my house such that then more people can live in it, then that would be a problem, because the other people in the shared courtyard can say, well, we don't want to share a courtyard with now more people. So these were the zoning laws of ancient Persian Babylonia. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'amen.